My name's Eli, and I'm 33. And until a few weeks ago, I thought I inherited a junkyard disguised as a gas station. My sisters. They called it Dad's Rust Museum. Now they're calling their lawyers. Let me back up. For most of my life, I worked side by side with my father at Rusty Pete's Service and Fuel, a rundown gas station on the edge of a town no one remembers unless they broke down near it. We had 2 sputtering pumps, a dusty repair bay, and a golden retriever named Buddy, who limped like he owned the place, which in a way he did. Dad was a war vet, the kind of man who fixed engines with one hand while holding a cigarette in the other. Didn't believe in fancy technology or retirement. He worked until his last breath, which came 3 months ago stroke in the middle of his Sunday crossword. I was the one who stayed. While my sisters left for the city, I stayed behind to run the station, fix flat tires, and make sure Dad took his blood pressure meds. I skipped job offers dates, even my graduation ceremony for that man. And I don't regret a single minute. But the real drama started at Dad's will reading. That's when everything flipped. My sisters, Claire, 39, and Mel, 36, came back in identical black dresses and matching pity smiles like it was a corporate PR visit. Claire's some top-tier attorney in Seattle, and Mel flips investment portfolios in Manhattan like she's on Wall Street's version of Tinder. They hadn't visited in over a year, but now they sat front row fully expecting a windfall. Claire had already picked out what she'd do with the lake house. Mel whispered about turning Dad's dust museum into a boutique cafe. Then Dad's lawyer, an old fisherman named Don, opened the envelope. To my daughters Claire and Melissa, I leave $50,000 each. I swear time froze. Claire blinked. Mel looked like she just stepped on a nail. Don continued. To my son Elijah, I leave full ownership of Rusty Pete's Service and Fuel, including all property contents and assets. Claire cut him off. Assets that place barely has indoor plumbing. And to Elijah, Don added, not missing a beat also goes Buddy the golden retriever, who never missed a single workday. You could hear a pin drop. Then Claire laughed. You can't be serious. The gas station. That dump, she snapped, waving a French manicured hand like she was shooing a bad smell. Mel leaned in all fake concern. Look, Eli, we get that you're attached, but this is a legal mess. The environmental codes alone could bankrupt you. I stayed quiet. Because while they were ranting, I remembered something Dad once said when he thought I wasn't listening. There's more value buried in this land than you'll ever get working for someone else. That night, I sat in the gas station office. Buddy curled up beside me, groaning like an old man. Dust coated every surface. The computer was a fossil. But as I opened drawers and went through Dad's old files, something clicked. He'd labeled certain documents with red dots. Others had blue X's. Property records, geological surveys. Then I found a map. A survey of the land behind the garage. On it, Dad had drawn a circle with the words confirmed zone and an arrow pointing to the brushy lot we always ignored. And in the bottom corner, one name was scribbled in all caps. D. Kaplan, USGS. Why would Dad be corresponding with the United States Geological Survey? The next morning, I pulled on my boots and trudged into the overgrown weeds behind the station. Buddy followed, tail wagging like this was a grand adventure. I pushed past thorn bushes and found it a half-buried hunk of rusted machinery maybe 10 feet across, swallowed by vines. An old core sampling rig. I stood there stunned. What the hell was Dad doing drilling back here? Before I could inspect further, Claire's shiny black Lexus slid into the gravel lot like a vulture landing on a carcass. We're upping our offer, she said without even saying hello. 40,000, you walk away. We'll even handle the paperwork. I smiled, not selling. Her smile dropped. Don't be foolish, Eli. This isn't a charity. That land's a toxic waste trap. You could be liable for... I waved her off. Thanks for your concern. She stormed off, heels clicking like gunshots. That night, I dug deeper, literally and figuratively. Back in the office, I found a locked drawer I'd never noticed before. Behind it, taped to the underside, was a small brass key and a note in Dad's handwriting. For the day you stop believing this place is worthless. I didn't sleep that night. My head was spinning. Land surveys, core samples, government names, a locked key, and two sisters suddenly pretending they care about a gas station they mocked for years. A few days later, Mel returned, this time with a man in a tailored suit. His handshake was cold and confident. He slid a document across the counter, a $100,000 offer for the property contingent on immediate sale. Cash, no questions asked, he said. Yeah, that didn't feel shady at all. I asked him point blank, why would anyone pay 6 figures for a gas station that hasn't turned a real profit since 2008? His smile didn't falter. Community development. Liar. They left without a deal. That night, I noticed a drone buzzing over the property. The next morning, a black SUV was parked down the street. Someone was watching me. Buddy started growling at the back fence. Then the city showed up. The building inspector. Code violations, soil samples. They barely glanced at the pumps, but spent an hour in the overgrown lot. One guy pulled me aside and whispered, "This isn't a normal inspection. Someone's pulling strings." You don't say. And just like that, I realized this isn't about a gas station. This is about what's under it. Let me tell you something I learned real quick. When people with money start showing up in your life out of nowhere, they're not here for your company. They're here for your silence. After that city inspection circus, things started moving fast. Too fast. First, my landlord left me a voicemail saying the building owners had received complaints about me running a commercial operation out of my apartment. Which is wild because I barely run a microwave in there. Then I got a friendly letter from the Department of Environmental Quality stating they'd be investigating my property for potential groundwater contamination. Right, 3 months ago nobody cared this place existed. Now suddenly it's EPA headline worthy. I knew what was happening. Claire and Mel were tightening the noose, and whoever they were working with, they had pull. But what they didn't have was Buddy. Now before you roll your eyes, yes, I'm talking about my dog. But hear me out. For a week straight, Buddy wouldn't leave this one patch of earth behind the garage. He'd limp over there, dig like his life depended on it, then sit and stare at me like, come on, man. I found something. So finally, I grabbed a shovel and joined him. What we uncovered wasn't just some concrete slab, it was a sealed hatch. Rusted. Hidden beneath decades of dirt and weeds, had a metal handle and everything. Dad had buried something deep. And suddenly all those strange markings on the map started making sense. The next morning, I went digging through Dad's office again. I found a box labeled spare keys and a coffee tin under the sink because why not? Most were junk. But one was gold, literally. Brass tiny and etched with 3 letters DKL. It fit the hatch lock like it was made for it. Opening that thing took all my weight and a crowbar. Buddy stood beside me, tail wagging, tongue out like we were opening a treasure chest. Inside was a set of concrete steps descending into blackness. I went down, flashlight in hand. Every step echoed like a warning. What I found? A room, roughly 10 by 10, lined with metal filing cabinets and one steel workbench. On the wall was a corkboard covered in maps, notes, and survey printouts. Next to it, a dusty laptop and a battery-powered lantern that flickered to life when I switched it on. Dad had built a secret lab under a gas station. I mean, who does that? Then I opened one of the drawers. Inside were geological reports, most dated from the early 90s to as recent as 5 years ago. All focused on the same thing: mineral deposits beneath our property. Not just any minerals either. We're talking lithium. Yep, the stuff that makes batteries, phones, electric cars. The material the entire tech world is crawling over itself to find. One report stood out: confirmed high-yield lithium zone. Property ID RPSF 103. Signed off by someone named Dr. Kaplan. Same name I saw on the map upstairs. Dad knew. He'd known for years. And he told no one. Back above ground, I started putting the pieces together. All the land he bought up in parcels over the years, every weird little corner lot, every useless acre he'd quietly scooped up. They formed a perfect circle, a protective boundary. He wasn't just preserving the family business, he was guarding a gold mine, literally. So when Claire and Mel offered $100,000 for this place, that wasn't generosity, that was panic. They found out just enough to realize they messed up leaving this place behind, and now they were scrambling to buy it before I figured it out. Too late. That same night, Mel texted me. Just one line. "Let's talk. No lawyers. Just us." I didn't respond. But the next morning, she showed up anyway. Full business mode, designer coat. That forced smile she always wore during Christmas dinners. "Eli," she said, "I'm worried about you. You're being emotional." Wow, that's rich, coming from someone who cried when Starbucks discontinued her favorite latte. "You're being manipulated," she added. Dad clearly wasn't thinking straight when he updated his estate. You know that. Actually, he was more lucid than either of them gave him credit for. But I let her keep talking. Then she hit me with it. "We've partnered with a development firm. They've expressed interest in the land for renewable energy research. You could be part of something big if you sell now." Translation, they're planning to extract the lithium. I stared at her dead silent. That's when she finally cracked. "You don't even know what you're sitting on," she blurted. "Ah, there it was. I do now." After she stormed off, I checked the old USB drive I'd found in the underground office. It had video logs, dozens of them. The first was Dad in his 40s holding a soil core sample and grinning like a mad scientist. "I knew it," he whispered to the camera. "It's here. It's all here. We just need time." The last video was from 6 months before he died. He looked older, thinner, but his eyes still had fire. "Eli, if you're watching this, you figured it out. The station was never about fuel. It was always the land. I bought every lot I could afford, every mineral right I could find. The girls, they wouldn't have understood. They don't value work that doesn't shine. But you stuck by me, so it's yours now. Don't let anyone take it." That night I couldn't sleep. Not because I was scared. Because for the first time in my life, I understood him. The next week was a whirlwind. I met with a mining consultant. Dad had worked with an old friend named Jonah who'd helped him test the early sites. When I showed him the data, his jaw dropped. "This isn't just a deposit," he said. "It's a motherlode." He ran some fresh tests, verified the reserves, said I could be sitting on $200 million worth of lithium, and that was a conservative estimate. I laughed out loud. Part shock, part terror. This was real. But good news travels fast. Too fast. A few days later, someone tried breaking into the back of the station. They tripped the motion sensor floodlights and took off, but I caught them on camera. Black hoodie, mask. Same car that had been parked down the street for days. Someone was done playing nice. I lawyered up. Turns out Dad created a trust, one not even listed in the will. It transferred full ownership of every parcel of land, every mineral, right directly to me the moment he died. Claire and Mel. They can fight the will all they want. The trust is bulletproof. I sat down with Dad's lawyer. He grinned like he'd been waiting to say this. "Your dad played a long game, Eli. And he played it damn well. The funny part, the town that used to treat me like a nobody now wants to name a street after Dad. The mayor who sent code inspectors to harass me is now asking for a partnership proposal. And my sisters, they just sent a certified letter through their attorney. They're offering $400,000 for the land." This time, I didn't even bother replying. Because here's the thing. They mocked me for fixing gas pumps and wiping windshield squeegees. But while they chased status, I inherited the ground they were standing on. And it's about to make me rich. You'd think finding out you're sitting on top of a $200 million lithium deposit would feel like winning the lottery. It doesn't. Not when your sisters suddenly turn into hostile investors. Not when strangers in tailored suits keep circling like vultures. And definitely not when you're dodging legal threats before your morning coffee. At this point, I wasn't just defending a gas station. I was holding a fortress. And they wanted in. It started with another letter. This one wasn't a polite offer. It was a legal challenge to the trust itself. Apparently, Claire and Mel had hired a team of estate attorneys who specialize in get-this-reversionary interest loopholes. In plain English, they were trying to argue that Dad wasn't mentally competent when he created the trust, even though he'd done it 5 years before he passed. 5 years before his health declined. Their argument was paper thin, but they had money. That meant they could drag it through court long enough to make my life hell. Still, I wasn't backing down. I met with Don again, Dad's lawyer, and we went through every detail. Turns out Dad had anticipated this exact move. He had recorded a video of himself signing the trust documents, clearly explaining his intentions. Dated, notarized, and witnessed by 2 people, including his doctor. That little piece of footage shut their argument down before it even made it to court. Score 1 for Dad. But the pressure didn't let up. That same week, someone tried to buy off my consultant, Jonah the geologist Dad had worked with. Some corporate guy flew in, found Jonah's office, and offered him a job consulting on a private project in Montana. Big paycheck. Immediate start. Jonah politely declined, then called me immediately. "Eli, your sisters aren't playing games. Whoever they're working with has serious money and no morals." I believed him, because the next day, Buddy didn't come back from his morning walk around the property. My heart sank. He never wandered, ever. I dropped everything and tore through the brush, calling his name like a lunatic. For 2 straight hours, I scoured every inch of that land. I finally found him half a mile away, locked in an abandoned utility shed, scared but unharmed. Whoever put him there wanted to send a message, back off, or we'll escalate. Well, message received, and ignored. That night, I pulled out a notebook and started sketching out my long game. I couldn't keep reacting. I needed to move first. Step 1, I called Don and asked him to help me incorporate a company, not just a shell for ownership, but a real business entity to manage the mining project. I named it Red Rock Renewables after the red soil beneath our land. The name sounded clean green and completely non-threatening, just the way I wanted it. Step 2, I brought in a second geologist to confirm Jonah's findings. Independent verification, documented, time-stamped. Step 3, I hired private security. Yeah, it felt weird posting signs and installing cameras at a gas station, but I wasn't taking chances anymore. Not after Buddy. Meanwhile, the town was waking up. I had local business owners popping in with coffee, pretending they were just saying hi, but really trying to sniff out rumors. The mayor stopped by again too. This time he was all smiles. "Eli just wanted to check in," he said. "Big things on the horizon, huh?" I didn't say much. Just offered him a soda and smiled back. But here's the kicker he knew. Not everything, but enough. Turns out my sisters had tipped him off about the lithium. Probably promised him a cut of some future development. And now that he realized they didn't have legal control, he was trying to pivot back into my good graces. Classic small-town politics. Then came the bombshell. Claire called. No lawyers, no fake smiles, just her voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. "I didn't want it to go this far," she said. "This was supposed to be a clean deal. You get a good payout, we keep things civil." I didn't respond. "But you had to make it personal." That made me laugh. Personal, I buried our father. Alone, but I let her talk. "You have no idea how deep this goes, Eli. These people," she paused, "you're out of your depth." That part was true, but that's what made it dangerous. See, I wasn't a player in their world. I wasn't predictable. I didn't care about status or quick money. I had nothing to lose but everything Dad worked for, and that made me someone they couldn't control. A few days later, I found a man in a black SUV parked behind the station again. This time, I walked right up to him and knocked on the window. He rolled it down just a crack. "Can I help you?" I asked. He didn't answer, just looked at me like he was waiting for me to flinch. I didn't. Finally, he pulled away without a word. But that night, I checked the security feed. He wasn't just watching. He'd gotten out at one point, walked around the back, and taken pictures, especially of the hatch. They knew about the underground room. And they were getting closer. I doubled down. Started storing all physical documents in a safety deposit box 2 towns over. Backed up everything digitally and encrypted the files. I even hired a part-time assistant, Maya, a brilliant local with a background in environmental law. She used to work for a clean energy startup out west, but came back to town to take care of her dad. We hit it off instantly. Sharp mind, no tolerance for BS. She read the reports, scanned the trust, and said, "You know you're sitting on a once-in-a-generation asset, right?" Yeah, I was starting to get that. Then came the final push. Claire and Mel filed one last legal play, a motion to freeze the property assets, claiming pending investigation into undue influence. Don shut it down in court with a single statement. The trust has been active for 5 years and is fully funded. There's no undue influence, just overdue resentment. The judge agreed. Motion denied. They were out of cards. But people like my sisters don't fold, they burn the table. A week later, someone tried to set the garage on fire. Security caught the guy, young nervous, hired off Craigslist for a couple $100 to set off smoke bombs as a distraction. He didn't even know who hired him, paid in cash. Luckily, nothing was damaged. But the message was clear. And this time, I wasn't just defending my father's legacy. I was defending my life. So I made a choice. No more waiting. No more defense. It was time to go on offense. I met with a real mining consultant, not just geology experts, but business developers. The kind that turn resources into revenue without selling your soul. We formed a joint venture, Red Rock Renewables would partner with them under strict terms. I'd retain 65% ownership. They'd handle extraction using low-impact, eco-friendly methods Dad had spent years researching. And best of all, they agreed to let me control the public narrative. We weren't just mining. We were revitalizing a forgotten community with clean energy, new jobs, and future-forward infrastructure. For the first time, I saw a way through this without losing myself in the process. Just before signing the deal, I visited the hatch one last time. Buddy trotted beside me, tail wagging like he knew we'd won something. I stood over the spot where it all began, where Dad had quietly mapped the future, while everyone else called him crazy. And I whispered, "I got it, Dad. I see the big picture now." Then I locked the hatch behind me. Not because I was hiding something, but because now I was ready to show the world. After I locked the hatch and signed the deal with the mining developers, things moved faster than I could have imagined. The next morning, a news van showed up outside Rusty Pete's. At first, I thought it was just another local business profile. I stepped outside, ready to say no comment, but then the anchor shoved a mic in my face and dropped a line that made my stomach twist. "Mr. Hale, care to respond to the claims that you've endangered this community for personal gain?" "Wait, what?" She continued. "Sources say you've made secret deals to mine hazardous materials under the gas station without notifying local authorities or the public. Some are calling it reckless, even dangerous." That's when I saw the article. Front page of the town paper, local gas station, hiding toxic mining, project community at risk. And guess who the anonymous concerned citizens were? Claire and Mel. They'd finally gone full scorched earth. I scanned the article. Loaded with vague accusations, misquotes, and phrases like unregulated drilling, potential water contamination, and undisclosed foreign partnerships. There was nothing illegal in the article. Just enough paranoia and misinformation to stir up panic. And it worked. By noon, I had protesters on the sidewalk with signs that said things like, "Keep our water clean," "No mines, no lies," "Gaslighting with gasoline." I would have laughed if I wasn't so mad. This was a town that once forgot to plow my driveway for 2 straight winters. Now they suddenly cared about my environmental impact. I had to fix this, and fast. That afternoon, I called a town hall meeting. Not at City Hall, not in some government building. I hosted it right there at the gas station with folding chairs under the big oak tree Dad planted back in '87. People showed up, some out of curiosity, some to argue, and some because they just love free lemonade and a reason to be nosy. I stood up on a milk crate because what's more fitting for a gas station legacy than a literal soapbox speech? I know there's been a lot of noise lately, a lot of fear, I get it. But I'm not hiding anything. My dad left me this land. Not just the building, not just the business, but the truth behind it. I paused. Let them squirm. He found something here years ago. Something valuable. Something we need more than ever in this country. Clean energy. I held up the geological reports. Passed out printed summaries to anyone who wanted proof. Yes, we've confirmed high-grade lithium reserves under this land. Yes, we're developing it. But it's fully legal, environmentally reviewed, and already approved by the state. The same state that built that bypass you all drive every day. That got a few laughs. I continued. And no, this isn't about greed. This is about bringing jobs, revenue, and actual investment back into a town that's been fading since Blockbuster closed. By the end of the meeting, the mood had changed. Not completely, but the pitchforks were gone. Some folks even clapped. Then an older man from the crowd raised his hand. It was Frank Delaney, former shop teacher at the high school. "Your dad ever talk to you about legacy?" he asked. I nodded. He didn't just talk about it, he built it. Frank looked around the crowd and said I knew Pete. He helped fix my brakes when I couldn't afford it. Didn't charge me a cent. If this kid says he's doing things the right way, I believe him. That was the moment things started shifting. Not in courtrooms, not in bank accounts, but in hearts. And for a small town like ours, that's where the real power is. Of course, it didn't take long for Claire to try spinning it. She posted some long-winded statement on LinkedIn about her commitment to environmental advocacy and how she regrets not being more involved in local redevelopment efforts. Right. She even showed up at the gas station the next day alone this time without lawyers or cameras. I didn't invite her in. She stood there awkwardly by the ice machine and said, "Eli, I was just trying to protect what's ours." That word ours almost made me laugh. "You didn't even come home for Dad's last birthday," I said. She flinched. "I was working. We were all working, Claire. The difference is I didn't stop showing up." Silence. Then she hit me with the real reason she came. Mel is panicking. Her name's tied to that article. And the firm she works for, they don't like that kind of heat. There it was. Not regret. Not apology. Just damage control. "You made your move," I said. "Now deal with the fallout." And I walked away. 2 days later, I got the call I didn't expect. It was Mel. No script, no fake lawyer voice, just her. "Eli, I'm sorry." That stopped me cold. "I didn't know Dad had set it all up. I thought you were just trying to cash in. I thought you were bluffing." "Well, I wasn't," I said flatly. "I know," she whispered. Then came the part I really didn't expect. "I want to make it right." I didn't say anything. I let the silence stretch until it got uncomfortable. "I have contacts," she continued. "Not the ones from before. Better ones. Ones who work in sustainable energy. Ones who don't operate in shadows." I finally asked, "Why are you really doing this?" She paused. "Because Dad was right about you. And I wasn't." Truth is, I didn't trust her. Not fully. But I knew better than to shut every door. So I agreed to meet. Public place, neutral ground, no contracts, just talk. And over coffee at a quiet diner on the edge of town, she laid out her proposal. She wanted in not as a buyer, but as an advisor. Offered to use her contacts to secure federal grants, media coverage, and long-term backing to help expand Red Rock Renewables into a regional energy leader. And in exchange, just a minority advisory role. No ownership, no voting power, just a seat at the table. I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no. Because here's the thing. Dad may have built this legacy for me, but maybe, just maybe, I could choose how big it becomes. Back at the station, Buddy was waiting for me like always. Gray around the muzzle now. A little slower, a little stiffer, but still loyal. I knelt down beside him and scratched behind his ears. "You knew before any of us, didn't you?" I muttered. He licked my face like it was the most obvious thing in the world. The next morning, I started sketching out something new. A community initiative powered by our project profits. Scholarships, green jobs, infrastructure upgrades, even a dog park in Buddy's honor. If we were going to mine this land, we were going to rebuild with it too. And for the first time since Dad passed, I felt like I was building something bigger than just a business. I was building a future. Things were starting to feel different. A month ago, I was elbow deep in a busted carburetor, dodging legal threats and watching my sisters try to snatch away everything Dad left me. Now, I was in a conference call with energy consultants from Denver, reviewing satellite surveys and negotiating tax incentives. Just like that, the station wasn't the story anymore. I was. After the town hall meeting, and Mel's unexpected truce offering momentum shifted hard in my favor. Red Rock Renewables made the front page again, this time in a real paper, not some local gossip rag. The headline read, "Small Town Lithium, One Man's Fight to Power the Future." Kinda cheesy, but it worked. Suddenly, reporters were reaching out, podcasts were calling, and even a documentary crew from Austin wanted to do a mini feature. At first, I wasn't sure about the attention. It felt weird putting my face next to something so huge. But then I remembered what Dad used to say. Either you tell your story or someone else will. So I leaned in. We launched a website for Red Rock. Maya helped craft the messaging Clean Energy Ethical Sourcing Community Investment. I did a short video explaining what we were doing and why, just me in front of the garage with Buddy at my side. The video blew up. By the end of the week, we had over 300,000 views, and that's when everything changed. It started with a call from the governor's office. They wanted to know more about our project, asked if we'd be open to meeting with their Department of Energy and Innovation. Said we were exactly the kind of initiative they wanted to support at the state level. Then came the grants, fast-tracked. Then came more offers, real ones this time. Not sketchy men in black SUVs or desperate buyouts from angry sisters. These were clean, structured deals from investors who believed in long-term infrastructure. And then came the one I didn't expect at all, a call from Tesla. I don't even remember what I said. I think I just muttered something about being a fan of the cars and promised to get back to them. I hung up and stared at my phone like it had just spoken Latin. This was happening. This was real. Of course, nothing good goes unchallenged. Just as things were heating up in a good way, Claire made one last move, a slick one. She filed for conservatorship over the mineral rights, claiming I was emotionally compromised due to grief and therefore legally unfit to manage high-value assets. Yeah, seriously. She said I was emotionally unstable, cited the death of our father, the sudden attention, and get this, my choice to live with a dog instead of seeking human connection. Even her own lawyer looked embarrassed. The judge threw it out without hesitation, but the message was clear: Claire wasn't done. I expected another court fight. Instead, I got something worse. That weekend, I came back from a meeting and found the station's front windows smashed in. Spray paint across the garage door in big red letters, "Sell out." Buddy barked like crazy, but whoever did it was long gone. Police showed up, took some photos, made some notes, told me it's probably just vandals. Teenagers. Yeah, right. 2 days later, one of our supply trucks was tampered with. Nothing catastrophic, just enough to raise suspicion. Lug nuts loosened. Brake line nicked. It was a warning. This wasn't about money anymore. Someone wanted control. Mel called that night, voice shaking. I swear I had nothing to do with it. I believed her. She sounded scared. Claire's in deeper than she's telling anyone. I think someone's backing her now. Real estate syndicates. Maybe even foreign money. That clicked. The guys in suits, the SUV, the aggressive buyout attempts. Claire wasn't just mad. She was in debt to the wrong people. And now she was desperate. That's when I made my next move. With Maya's help, we transferred Red Rock Renewables into a trust-protected holding company. Then we added another layer board oversight with community representation. We weren't just protecting the land. We were securing the project against anyone trying to hijack it. Even me. I wanted people to trust this vision long after I was gone. Dad's dream deserved that. After the company structure was finalized, I hosted a press event at the station. No flash, no fancy banners. Just a podium in the gravel lot, a banner that read, "Powering the future, protecting the past." I told them everything. How Dad had started drilling back in the 80s with a hunch and a homemade rig. How he kept buying up land while people laughed behind his back. How he'd stashed the truth underground, not because he didn't trust us, but because he knew we weren't ready. And how he left it all not to sell off, but to build something lasting. The crowd was quiet. Even some of the protesters were there without signs this time. This isn't just a mine, I said. It's our shot at redemption. At making this forgotten little town matter again. Not just for a headline, but for real. Then I did something I'd been waiting for since this all started. I walked Claire's legal notice over to the mayor's office and shredded it publicly. Didn't say a word, just shredded it and walked out. People applauded. Buddy barked. Felt poetic. Of course, Claire wasn't done. Her last card came 2 days later. She showed up in person, alone, no lawyers. She looked tired. Really tired. The kind of tired that comes from realizing you lost more than just a legal battle you lost face. Family, purpose. I wanted it to be mine, she admitted, standing in the same gravel lot she once called worthless. Not because I needed the money, but because I couldn't stand the idea that Dad believed in you more than me. That hit harder than I expected. Not because it was true, but because she believed it was. He didn't love me less, Claire, I said. He just trusted me to finish what he started. She nodded, said nothing, got back in her car and drove off. I haven't heard from her since. That night, I stood under the old station sign, still rusted, still crooked, and thought about painting it. Maybe a fresh coat, maybe a new name. But part of me liked it the way it was. A reminder of where it all started. Buddy curled up at my feet, tail wagging slow and steady. We'd won. Not the money, not the land, but the right to build something real. It's been a year since I cracked open that underground hatch and found out the truth about Dad the land and what he'd really left me. 12 months. And somehow it feels like both a lifetime and a blink. Red Rock Renewables isn't just a startup now. It's a full-fledged operation with drill permits, production schedules, and over 30 employees. And not just outsiders either. These are hometown folks. Mechanics, welders, equipment, techs. People who'd been stuck in dead-end jobs or out of work entirely. They work in safety vests now with good pay and real benefits. Some mornings, I get to the station early and just sit on the porch with Buddy sipping black coffee and watching pickup trucks roll in one by one. It never gets old. The gas station still stands, by the way. I didn't tear it down, didn't turn it into some corporate hub. I gave it a fresh coat of paint, bright red and white, same colors Dad used when he first bought the place. The sign out front still says Pete's Service Station, a little crooked, still rusty at the bolts. Every once in a while, someone comes by needing a flat fixed or a tank topped off. I still help when I can, not because I have to, because I want to. We turned the back acreage where the original lithium deposits were confirmed into a protected zone. The mining happens further out now in a satellite site that doesn't touch the old hatch or the concrete slab Buddy first uncovered. We're using clean extraction methods, low water usage, solar support. Dad had actually planned for all that. Buried deep in those old filing cabinets, there were sketches for containment and mitigation systems. He didn't just want to pull value from the ground. He wanted to leave it better than he found it. That became our mission. A few weeks ago, we held a ribbon-cutting ceremony for the town's new community center, built with funds from Red Rock. Maya coordinated the whole thing right down to the food trucks and live band. Even the mayor showed up looking slightly sheepish, but ready to smile for the camera. Whatever beef we had, it was water under the bridge now. He's backed off the political games and publicly credited the project with helping revitalize the area. To be honest, I think he's just relieved to finally be on the winning team. Mel came to the opening. She didn't stay long, just long enough to shake my hand, pat Buddy on the head, and say, "You did good, Eli." She meant it. She's still on the advisory board, no ownership stake, just input. And she's been using her connections to bring in education programs, tech apprenticeships, even funding for local clean water projects. Turns out when she's not playing power broker, she's actually decent at building bridges. I guess we both had to grow up a little. Claire didn't show. She sent a card. That surprised me more than if she'd come herself. It said, "I was wrong. You earned this. See." That was it. No long apology, no backdoor offer. Just 7 words and a signature that didn't look like it had been written by a lawyer. And honestly, it was enough. There's still tension. Still critics, still people who think I just got lucky. But luck doesn't keep you up at 2 a.m. analyzing soil reports and drafting equipment budgets. Luck doesn't rebuild a gas station, restore community trust, and fend off vultures with expensive haircuts. That was grit. And a damn good dog. Buddy's getting older now. Slower. I carry him in and out of the truck when his hips start acting up. He's still sharp, still loyal, still my shadow. We built a small dog park behind the community center and named it after him, Buddy's Field. Kids laugh, dogs run, old folks sit on benches and sip sweet tea while the world spins a little softer. Dad would have loved that. One morning, I found myself walking the property, boots crunching over gravel, thinking about how far we'd come. I ended up behind the garage near the old hatch. It was still there. Locked, preserved. A marker stone now stands beside it. Franklin Hale Visionary, Father, Farmer of the Future. I ran my fingers over the carved letters and smiled. For so many years, I thought he was just a stubborn old man who couldn't let go of a broken dream. But now I realize he never let go because the dream was never broken. It just hadn't bloomed yet. I stood there for a while, breathing in the cool air, feeling the weight of everything settle into something new, something calm. Not relief, not victory, just peace. It was never about the money. It was about meaning. Dad didn't leave me a gas station. He left me a compass. And I followed it straight to a life I never expected but wouldn't trade for anything. Later that night, I found an old notebook in the back of his office drawer. Tucked between receipts and utility bills, inside were short journal entries, scrawled notes. One caught my eye. If Eli stays, he'll find it. He sees what the girls don't. Not just what's under the ground, but what's worth fighting for above it. I closed the notebook and set it beside the lamp. Buddy whined at my feet like he knew it was time for a walk. We stepped outside together into the quiet, dark streetlights flickering like old memories. No cameras, no news crews, just gravel wind and the soft rhythm of a town that finally found its pulse again. Legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what you teach others to carry forward. And thanks to Dad, I'm carrying more than just mineral rights or a fortune. I'm carrying purpose. And I'm just getting started. Story 2. While I battled for my life in the intensive care unit, my wife slept in our bed with her trainer. Thus, I quietly recovered and took a single action that left her life in ruins. My name is Mike, a 34-year-old man who, prior to everything that transpired, seemed to have a stable existence. During my 2 years as a financial analyst for a mid-sized investment business, something occurred. Although it's not really interesting, I worked really hard to get there. Coming from a low-income household where no one attended college. My mom spent the most of my youth waiting tables at the same diner, while my dad spent 35 years working on the train. I battled my way up after they managed to scrounge together enough money for community college. I graduated with honors, worked full-time while attending night school, and got an entry-level job that helped me advance to a higher position. I made All-State my senior year, played linebacker in high school, and had a few tiny college offers. But I decided to pursue academics instead. Even after high school, I continued going to the gym 5 or 6 days a week. At my best, I was able to deadlift large weights and bench press 280 pounds. But I'm not one of those Instagram fitness guys who post shirtless pictures every day. At 6 feet 1 inch, I weighed 215 pounds and had 12% body fat. Solid and powerful, but not bodybuilder territory. My 32-year-old wife, Melissa, never understood that training was my therapy. When I would wake up at 5 in the morning to work out before going to the workplace, she would roll her eyes. "Why are you required to arrive so early? There's no moving the weights." From between the blankets, she would murmur. I would simply advise her to go back to sleep and give her a forehead kiss. In hindsight, that was a clue. She never made an effort to comprehend my priorities. 6 years ago, I met her at a friend's cookout. To be honest, she was well over my league. The blonde fit was ideal. Grin, the entire bundle. She was employed by a luxury company in marketing. She was always well-groomed and had the perfect response for any circumstance. She was the type of lady that when she enters a room, turns heads. After a year, I felt deeply in love and proposed. Our wedding was the epitome of perfection. She was wearing a gorgeous outfit that probably cost more than my first vehicle, and there were hefty people in a vineyard setting. After a couple too many drinks, my dad drew me away at the reception. "Are you certain about this one?" he said. "She seems high maintenance." I dismissed it with a giggle. I persuaded myself that Dad was outdated and didn't get modern ladies. The red flags were flying in all directions as you looked back. However, when you wear those rose-colored glasses, you are aware of how things are. When I bring up budgeting for our future or indirectly criticize my family for being straightforward, she becomes agitated. She expected me to hear every detail of her office drama, yet she would zone out any time I spoke work or stress. We lived in a suburban home with an open kitchen. As soon as we got in, she demanded renovations. Every winter, she would spend hours taking the ideal beach shots while I just wanted to unwind on our trips to Cabo. Our social media profile resembled that of the ideal pair. Her Instagram was flooded with meticulously produced pictures of us in a state of pleasure. It's funny that when I told her that I was too exhausted to go out with her friends on a work night, her face was not visible in any of those photos. However, I genuinely believed that we were solid. Yes, there had been less time spent in bed, and perhaps she was spending more time on her phone than chatting to me, but I assumed it was simply a typical aspect of marriage. But we still went on dating evenings. Each time she went with the restaurant. Even though I generally uttered, "I love you" first, we still said it. We continued to make plans for the future. However, it appeared like she intended for me to earn more money. God, what a fool I was. Everything goes to hell right here. It all began during the hectic work season. I was working 60-hour weeks, staying up late most nights, and occasionally taking work home on the weekends to analyze portfolio performance for our biggest customers. Although Melissa wasn't happy about it, I was expecting for a promotion that would imply less hard labor in the future, and the overtime compensation was fantastic. I began to feel strange around 3 weeks into this regimen. Not a big deal at first, just utterly worn out. Despite skipping exercises, my muscles hurt more than usual, as if I had ruined myself at the gym. I began experiencing chills in the afternoon and had a persistent headache that Advil was unable to relieve, despite the fact that the weather was warm. Melissa hardly raised her head from her phone when I suggested to her that she consult a doctor. "You're constantly searching for reasons to postpone our date night with my pals. Man up and take some Advil. Perhaps you wouldn't be so exhausted if you weren't at the gym every morning," she added. Typical of her, she makes everything about herself while subtly criticizing me. I persevered for an additional week. I came so close to fainting that I could only do half of my usual workout. Coworkers began giving me strange glances when they noticed that I was perspiring at my desk in a cool workplace. Even my supervisor inquired about my family's well-being. I claimed to be all right, most likely simply fending off a bug. Then the fever struck. Not your typical pop, some NyQuil fever, but the kind where you wake up feeling as though your brain is cooking inside your skull and your sheets are completely soaked. The kind where you can hardly move to use the restroom because your joints hurt so much. The thermostat read 102.3 degrees, as I recall. It's definitely time for a doctor's appointment, but not quite emergency room territory yet. Melissa's answer: "Then simply sleep in the guest room. I can't risk getting sick because I have a presentation tomorrow. If you'd like, there's soup in the pantry." That night, she didn't even come to see how I was doing. While I was shivering in the guest room under 3 blankets, I could hear her talking to her friend on the phone and laughing about something. Too frail to rise and prepare that soup she had so kindly recommended. The following morning, I called the doctor's office, but they were unable to schedule an appointment until the following week. If I felt worse, the nurse on the phone advised that I go to urgent care. I made the decision to persevere over the weekend. A huge error. When I woke up on Sunday at 3 in the morning, I was unable to move my right side normally. My leg wasn't reacting properly, and my arm felt heavy and nearly numb. My heart was racing so hard I could feel it in my teeth, and the room was spinning. Halfway to the bathroom, I tried to get up and fell, toppling the nightstand in the process. Melissa must have been awakened by the noise because she approached the doorway and leaned against it while crossing her arms. She didn't rush to assist me or inquire about my well-being. Instead, she simply stood there looking irritated. "It is the middle of the night, Mike, really." She said. I tried to explain while lying on the floor, unable to move, my voice slurring a little. "I think something's really wrong. I can't feel my arm." "Right." The room's spinning. She sighed dramatically, like I'd asked her to drive me to the airport during rush hour. "I'm not your mother, Mike. Handle it yourself. I have that client meeting at 9 hours in the morning and need my sleep." Then she went back to bed and closed the door. I lay there on the floor for probably 15 minutes trying to get my body to cooperate. I finally managed to drag myself back to the bed and grab my phone. I couldn't focus enough to use the touchscreen properly, so I used voice commands to call my brother Ryan. He lives across town but made it to our house in 20 minutes. The look on his face when he saw me told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't me being a wimp. Something was seriously wrong. "Jesus Christ, Mike," he said, helping me sit up. "Why didn't you call an ambulance?" I remember mumbling something about insurance and costs. Ryan didn't waste any more time arguing. He just helped me to his car. I couldn't walk straight and needed him practically carrying me. Melissa didn't even come out of the bedroom as we left. Ryan left a note for her saying he was taking me to Memorial Hospital's ER. The ER was absolute chaos Saturday night into Sunday morning, is apparently when all the drunks' fights and car accidents happen. But one look at me and the triage nurse called for a wheelchair immediately. My fever was now 104.5 degrees. My blood pressure was dangerously low, and by this point I could barely stay conscious. Things move quickly after that. Blood draws IV lines. Doctors firing questions at Ryan about my medical history that I was too out of it to answer. The word septic shock started being thrown around. Someone mentioned my kidneys were showing signs of distress. A neurologist was summoned to assess my right-sided weakness. Ryan contacted Melissa again when they stated they were admitting me to the ICU. Apparently, she'd finally received his message and texted him inquiring what was going on. He informed her I was critically unwell, maybe septic, and was being transported to intensive care. Her response: "Which hospital again?" She turned up an hour later in yoga pants and full makeup, looking irritated as hell, like she'd been called away from something important. By this point, I was connected up to various IV medications, fluids, and monitoring devices. A nurse was inserting a central line in my neck for drug administration. "You couldn't have picked a worse moment for this," Melissa murmured, not even glancing at me as the nurses transported me to a critical care bed. "I have that campaign launching tomorrow. Is this going to take all day? Should I cancel my afternoon appointments?" Melissa was treated like she had sprouted a second head by the ICU nurse Patricia, an elderly woman whose badge said Patricia. "Your spouse is quite unwell, ma'am. His illness is in his bloodstream since it has become septic. He will be here for some time." Melissa seemed shocked by this revelation. She took out her phone, sat on the visitor's chair in the corner of the room, and ignored everything else going on. While the physicians stated that I had a serious bacterial illness that had spread throughout my body, she stayed for almost half an hour and browsed Instagram. She was remarking on her friend's new haircut and admiring pictures of the beach while I was practically battling for my life. When she eventually stated, "I have to go," she gathered her bag and approached my bed without even getting out of bed. "Tomorrow I'll check in. When speaking with the physicians, try not to be overly theatrical. They have a lot going on." Ryan was furious. "Do you mean me?" When she was gone, he said, "You might not survive." A marketing campaign is another issue that worries her. I was too ill to think about it. My entire body was being pounded by the virus. I was experiencing organ failure. Later, the physicians informed me that my lactate levels, which indicate how severely oxygen is depriving your tissues, were extremely high. I spent the following 2 days slipping in and out of consciousness. Ryan remained as long as they would allow him to phoning our parents who lived 3 states away and speaking with physicians. Melissa made one 15-minute visit during those crucial 48 hours. When she first came, the staff asked her too many questions and she was upset about the hospital parking. She showed no indications, didn't grasp my hand, and didn't touch me. She was worried that her spouse could pass away. She did, however, snap a selfie in the intensive care unit waiting area, which she subsequently posted on Instagram with the remark, "Tough times. Put us all to the test. We must pray. Be a strong wife." Later on, I found out that the nurses had established a betting pool to see if she would return. Ryan was informed by one of them, a man called Steve, who had been looking after me all night. I've worked as an intensive care unit nurse for 15 years, and I've never witnessed a spouse be so detached from their partner's illness. Most of the time, we have to make them go home and relax. I became stable enough to leave the intensive care unit on day 3. Although still very unwell, there is no longer a direct risk of death. Melissa's reaction upon hearing the news from Ryan: "Fantastic. He'll be home shortly then." That day, there was no visit. She texted to say she would try to stop by tomorrow, but she was really busy at work. My folks drove 14 hours straight to get there, and they arrived that evening. When my mother saw me, she started crying. Despite his best efforts, Dad had to leave the room for a short while. "Where was Melissa?" they inquired. They didn't press it, and Ryan simply shook his head. The infectious disease specialist discovered what was going on the following day. I had contracted an unusual strep throat complication. Yes, I had a common old case of strep throat, which I probably mistakenly believed to be a simple sore throat from exhaustion. I was unable to move my arm normally since the germs had entered my bloodstream and damaged my right shoulder muscle, resulting in necrotizing fasciitis. I probably would have lost my arm or passed away in a matter of hours if Ryan hadn't brought me to the hospital at the appropriate time. The diseased tissue had to be removed surgically. When the physicians requested that the consent documents be signed by my next of kin, Ryan had to explain that my wife was unavailable and that my parents would need to sign because I was still in and out of consciousness. It was all in the surgeon's face. 3 hours were spent on the procedure. Although they were able to preserve my arm's entire function, they did remove a sizable portion of muscle from my right shoulder. I wouldn't be permanently crippled, but I would require a lot of physical rehabilitation. Ryan. Mom and Dad were there when I woke up in recovery. No, Melissa. The following day, she sent flowers not delivered by hand, but via a delivery service, along with a letter that wished them a speedy recovery. You adore them, miss. When they brought them in, the nurses looked at each other. I acted as though I was unaware. I was still really weak on my 5th day in the hospital, but I was cognizant and beginning to realize how close I had come to being discharged. The fever had subsided, the drugs were taking effect, and I could have short talks without becoming tired. My parents had promised to return for evening visiting hours after going to rest at Ryan's house. When Melissa eventually paid a visit, she was dressed in business casual, as if she were going to a lunch meeting, rather than to see her husband who had nearly passed away. While partially listening to the doctor explain that I would require substantial care throughout my recuperation, she sat in the window chair and browsed through her phone. My body had suffered greatly as a result of the infection, including severe muscle loss, possible heart and kidney problems that would require daily wound care for the surgical site, and a lengthy course of antibiotics. How much time will it take? Finally, glancing up from her Instagram alerts, she questioned. Next week, I'll be in Chicago for the conference, the one I mentioned months ago. For my career, it is crucial. To his credit, the doctor maintained a neutral look. Mr. Thompson will require months of therapy after a few weeks of recuperation at home. For at least 6 weeks, if not longer, he won't be able to work. He will require help with everyday tasks, wound care, and getting to and from doctor's visits. Melissa's expression dimmed. However, the week after, I have that conference at the charity gala. You understand the significance of those, Mike. The doctor glanced back at her after glancing at me. Your husband almost passed away, Mrs. Thompson. Right now, the focus must be on his recuperation. An awkward hush fell after the doctor's departure. Melissa returned to her phone, letting out a theatrical sigh every now and again, as if her timetable were being disrupted by the entire circumstance. The drugs had left my lips feeling parched. The water cup on the tray table was just out of reach when I reached for it. I had already spilled water on myself twice while attempting to drink by myself because I was still so weak that my hands trembled. Please pass that water to me, Melissa. She was clearly irritated by the interruption and looked up from her phone. I am not your nurse, Jesus Mike. Take care of it yourself. There's a call button there for you. I realized then. My wife had less empathy for me than the night janitor who had come by earlier to take out my trash and had taken the time to inquire about my well-being even after 6 years of marriage. Not as worried about my health as the cafeteria employee who had brought me extra Jell-O after noticing I wasn't eating much. Because, honey, you must maintain your strength. I simply nodded and said nothing. What could be said? When the real nurse finally arrived, she discovered that I was having trouble getting to the water, helped me drink, took my temperature, and adjusted my pillows while Melissa loudly watched TikTok videos. Your brother is here, said the nurse. And seeing Ryan enter a room has never made me feel so relieved. After he saw me straining to drink water and Melissa not paying attention, his face hardened in a way I had never seen before. In the family, Ryan is typically the laid-back one who jokes and keeps things light. However, he appeared to want to fling Melissa's phone out the window at that precise moment. His voice tight with controlled anger, he told her, "I need to talk to you in the hallway." I don't know exactly what he said, but she was quiet, almost quiet, and left right away after saying she had an important meeting. Ryan stayed to help me with dinner until visiting hours ended, and we didn't discuss anything significant. He said, "Just being there, bro," before lowering his expression to one of seriousness. "I discovered something that you ought to be aware of. I should tell you when you're stronger, but not yet. We must speak." How awful, I asked, anticipating from his expression that it would hurt no matter what. He gave my good shoulder a light squeeze. "Prioritize your recovery. I've got your back. You know that, right?" I nodded, and he left that night for the first time since being in. I cried. Not from the agony, though. There was enough of that, but from the understanding that the person who was meant to love me the most in this world couldn't even be bothered to offer me a cup of water when I was too weak to reach it myself. I spent 12 days in that hospital, 12 days of battling my way back. The virus had utterly ruined my physique. I dropped 22 pounds of primarily muscle, could hardly go to the restroom without feeling tired, and had to relearn things like holding a fork without trembling. The physical therapist, a guy named Marcus, started working with me on day 6. He didn't sugarcoat anything. "This is going to be hard, Mike. You were in terrific form earlier, which is possibly what saved your life, but you've got a mountain to climb to get back there." We started with easy workouts. Squeezing a stress ball, raising my arm, and getting out of bed without feeling lightheaded. Being reduced to rejoicing over these minor triumphs was degrading. Marcus, however, was excellent. He pushed me just enough without going too. "Your body has experienced war," he clarified. "While challenging it to rebuild, we must honor that." Every day, Ryan was there. My parents visited the hospital every day after flying here and staying at his house. When I contacted my manager, reassured me that my job was safe and instructed me to concentrate on my recovery work. To help pass the time, coworkers supply meals for my family, send cards, and even give me a tablet with games and movies on it. Dave, a friend from high school, drove 3 hours to spend a day with me. While her husband was recovering from his near-death experience, Melissa paid him 4 visits in a 12-day period. Every visit was more agitated and shorter than the one before, but time she brought me clean clothing. They weren't even folded before being tossed in a trash bag. She remained for 20 minutes during the last visit, and she mostly complained about having to reschedule her hair appointment since my mom had requested her to bring up some medical items for my release. She scrolled through her phone and remarked, "I don't understand why your mom couldn't just order them online. I have a life of my own to manage after all." I didn't answer, just concentrated on the exercises Marcus had shown me because I lacked the energy for it, attempting one tiny motion at a time to regain my strength. I was supposed to be discharged the day prior. At long last, Ryan shared his findings with me. He had gone to our house to get me additional clothing, and because he couldn't find my insurance information in the office, he had printed it out on Melissa's laptop. The screen has displayed a message notification. I'm excited about tonight. He has no suspicions at all. "Bring me some of my favorite lingerie." Her gym trainer, Jason, sent it to her. Completely stereotypical. Tight clothes and tribal tattoos. He is always discussing how much protein he consumes. About 8 months ago, Melissa began exercising with him after stating that she needed to tone up. Ryan is probed more since he is the protective brother. He discovered hotel receipts, hundreds of texts dating back months, and graphic chats about their meetings, including ones that took place in our bed and in our house. There's more. In several of the texts she discusses, Ryan spoke softly and with a heavy voice. "You claim that she needs a genuine guy who doesn't bore her with conversations about budgets and retirement funds because you're weak, too sentimental, and not male enough for her." He showed me the screenshots he had taken with his phone. My wife was whining to her boyfriend about me in black and white, joking that I had become dull and soft since we were married. She said that she was content with her financial security, but that she wanted stimulation elsewhere. The saddest aspect is that the most recent texts came from while I was battling for my life in the intensive care unit. They were getting together on our bed at home. "I'm sorry to hear Mike's passing. Does it imply you're free tonight because Jason wrote, but he's in the hospital?" What did she say? Of course. Playing the protective brother, Ryan remained there. The home is therefore deserted. "Bring some wine." Ryan placed his phone aside and said, "I knew you needed to know. However, I wanted to hold off until you were more resilient. At home, there is additional proof." Before she could remove it, I snapped photos of everything. I wasn't yet furious. Later on, that would happen. I simply had clarity at that very time. Similar to the last puzzle piece. For the first time, the full image of my marriage appeared as everything clicked into place. I spent 6 years justifying her actions and persuading myself that her coldness was just her personality. It was usual for her to be uninterested in my life. I told Ryan I wasn't going back to that place and I need your aid. He was already working on it when he nodded. "My parents support me in this. We've got you." When the nurse arrived later that evening to check my vitals, she inquired about my well-being. I had high blood pressure. "I just discovered that my wife has been unfaithful to me." "Too tired to sugarcoat it," I said. She gave me a hand pat. "Honey, while you've been in here, that isn't a wife until the appropriate woman shows up that will serve as a stand-in." Melissa believed I would be released the next day, but the plan quickly came together. In fact, the doctors wanted me to remain for another night so they could observe me. We had a full day to organize everything. Ryan gave our friend Steve, a lawyer, a call. He was a fairly successful divorce lawyer, and we played football together in high school. That evening, Steve arrived at the hospital prepared with documentation. Power of attorney. So that Ryan could take care of my business while I retrieved the necessary paperwork for the bank to safeguard my personal accounts and the first divorce documents. Steve suggested not to face her just yet. He had a solemn look. "Not until everything is in place and you're stronger. She has revealed herself to you. Have faith in her." Everything was autographed by me. Even if my hand is still trembling, the signature is sufficiently readable. Steve committed to filing the documents as soon as the sun rose. Before he left, he added, "I've seen a lot of divorce cases in my time, Mike. However, this is chilly. You're worthy of better." Melissa was ostensibly at work the following morning, but her phone indicated that she was at an adjacent apartment. Ryan had indeed checked. Ryan visited the residence with her cousins, Tim and Eric. Only clothing that were unquestionably mine were taken. Personal belongings. My degrees, prizes, and crucial papers, as well as my grandfather's collection of watches. Ryan arranged for me to recuperate in a tiny apartment close to his home. When I was strong enough to work out outside, I could walk to a park from the first floor, which has an accessible bathroom. In order to help me regain my strength, Mom filled the kitchen with nutritious items. Dad installed a suitable adjustable bed in the bedroom. Better than a regular mattress for my recuperation. Tim, who works there, made sure I had a laptop set up and a reliable internet connection so I could eventually work from home. To keep me from falling, Eric, a construction worker, put grab bars in the restroom. Melissa was furious to learn that I had been sent to Ryan's care rather than returning home. "Don't worry, not worried. I'm furious. Why wouldn't you tell me about it? I am your spouse. Here I had everything prepared for you." The first outright falsehood was that the residence had been visited by Ryan. There had been no preparation. Her yoga equipment filled my side of the closet. The bedding in the guest room where I had been staying prior to the hospital were still filthy. There were also leftovers from takeout, some yogurt, and 3 bottles of white wine in the refrigerator. For someone recuperating from a serious illness, nothing. I sent back a brief response. "To grow stronger, I need time. For now, I'm staying with Ryan." Her answer was instructive. "Are you turning against me because of your family? Are you all right, or what are you in need of?" Instead of making my own choice, I assumed right once that I was being controlled. I spent 2 weeks concentrating only on my morning physical therapy recovery. Meals high in protein can help you gain muscle. Daily strolls that grew longer, appropriate sleep and medicine. No communication with Melissa other than the occasional factual text. She wavered between rage and calm. "You're acting absurdly. Come home, please." Manipulation. "I have been quite concerned about you. Are you indifferent to the impact this has on me? People are feigning interest and asking inquiries about social media. I'm requesting prayers for my husband's ongoing recuperation, the life of a blessed wife." The tale she posted on Instagram was a far cry from the truth. She posted about holding down the fort and taking care of everything, while my partner regained his sense of reality while I was learning how to perform simple duties once more. She hadn't even inquired about my prescriptions. Ryan, meantime, had used a Pi to record several meetings between Melissa and Jason. The Pi discovered proof of a second man as well, one of her marketing firm's partners. Apparently, she required 2 replacements, but I wasn't man enough for her. In our state, Steve was constructing a strong divorce case. Abandoned mentorship, a medical emergency, and misappropriation of marital assets are more likely to result in a better divorce settlement than adultery alone. She had been using our joint account to purchase gifts for her lover. My position was undoubtedly reinforced. I had advanced a great deal by the conclusion of those 2 weeks. I wouldn't feel tired when strolling around the block. My surgery incision was healing nicely, and I was lifting light objects with my healthy arm. Above all, I had a clear head. The day I was well enough to think strategically again, the haze of sickness and medicine had dissipated. I gave her a call and suggested we meet at a coffee shop close to Ryan's house. I purposefully chose a public place because I didn't trust myself to be with her alone in my apartment and because I wanted witnesses in case she caused a commotion. I wasn't sure I could remain strong if she switched on the waterworks, not because I'd wounded her. As always, she looked stunning when she arrived. Hair makeup, a pricey top, and designer trousers. Perfect. But when she spotted me, her eyes grew wide. I still weighed 15 pounds less than I usually did, and the surgical scar was visible above my shirt collar. However, I appeared healthier once again, and more significantly, my eyes were clear. No more fog in the head, no more being weak, just purpose and clarity. What is the purpose of this drastic departure? Opposite me, she sat down and demanded, "You decide to ruin our marriage after coming dangerously close to death. Are you experiencing a breakdown of some sort? Because, Mike, this is not typical behavior." I looked at her face. When I was too weak to help myself, this lady I had planned a future with and loved for 6 years didn't care enough to help me sip water, while I was struggling for my life in the intensive care unit who had shared our bed with another man. Not a word. A folder was slid across the table by me. The pills, pictures, text message, screenshots, hotel receipts, and credit card bills displaying the presents she had purchased for her lovers using our joint account were all within. She had complained to Jason about my neediness interfering with their plans in a particularly damaging text conversation from the day I had gone into septic shock. As she scanned through the material, her face turned white. I allowed her to view all of the hidden credit cards she had applied for in my name as I sat quietly. While I was in the hospital, the hotel charged me for SMS that made fun of me, called me weak, dull, and not macho enough, and planned their meetings. When she glanced up at last, I gently stated, "I know everything. I submitted a divorce petition. Tomorrow you will be served. By the end of the week, your belongings will be packed and placed in storage. The residence will be listed for sale." Her face displayed an intriguing range of emotions, including shock, rage, deliberation, and ultimately an effort at seduction. Across the table, she stretched for my hand. "I messed up, Mike darling. You being so ill made me anxious and afraid. It had no significance. This is something we can resolve. Consult a counselor, perhaps." I withdrew my hand. "While I was in the intensive care unit due to organ failure, you shared our bed with another man. Then, while whining to your friends that I was using my condition to get attention, you had an affair with your employer. There is no way to resolve that." Her gaze hardened, and she immediately changed strategy. "You have been so aloof. Always at the gym or at work. What should I have done? For months, you seldom touched me. Then you become ill and think I'm Florence Nightingale. That's not my style." "You're correct," I said, getting to my feet. "It's not what you were made for. That's the reason I'm going. The man you believed was too frail to go. You just did." She was sitting there with the evidence folder when I left. Outside, Ryan was waiting in the car. "How did it go?" "Just like I expected," I said. She attempted the typical Melissa tactic of making excuses, seducing, and then transferring the responsibility. The texts began that evening. First begging, then furious, then menacing. The divorce papers had been served to her that afternoon. Steve claims that she would destroy them in front of the process server, as though doing so would render them unusable. She wrote, "You can't do this to me." I made a single error. I didn't answer. Nothing else could be said. As anticipated, the divorce was nasty. Melissa tried everything, accusing me of abandoning her, being emotionally abusive, and being mentally ill due to the sepsis. When we presented the hospital surveillance tape of her browsing Instagram as the physicians described my serious condition, the court was not impressed. The last straw was the texting she exchanged with her boyfriends about my frailty when I was in the hospital. Melissa was slapped with my medical costs, and the judge gave me the majority of our assets. The first delivery from Karma. Melissa's well-planned life, meanwhile, was falling apart spectacularly. When his wife learned of her affair with Jason, she went viral on social media, naming their friends, family, and place of employment. When his wife uncovered receipts for jewelry he had purchased Melissa with their shared credit card, she realized that Jason had been married the entire time. Isn't that ironic? The controversy was not well received by Melissa's marketing agency, particularly as it was revealed that she had also been having an affair with one of the partners. She lost the fancy title, the expense account, and the prestige that comes with working for a famous agency when she was asked to leave. Naturally, Jason broke up with her right once, pleaded for his wife's pardon, and said he had made a grave error by letting Melissa aggressively pursue him. The partner at her firm disputed everything, saying Melissa was unstable and made things up to get attention. The partner was already engaged to someone else. I kept a safe distance from it all, neither taking part nor gloating. By that time, we had finalized our divorce and I had gone on with my life. However, I was still informed about the highlights by our common acquaintances, and sometimes I would read updates from folks we knew on social media. Karma wasn't finished yet, though. A year or so following our divorce, my new girlfriend, Sarah, and I were moving into a new home that was larger than my post-divorce apartment and had space for both my extended home gym and her home office. I got a call from Ryan. "You won't believe this, dude. Melissa just lost her new job," he remarked. It turns out that she had been disparaging her employer to coworkers without understanding that the boss's assistant was there. The assistant, who had been becoming more and more irritated with Melissa's conceited demeanor, filmed the chat on her phone and played it for the boss, who had taken a risk on her despite the scandal at her former position. That day, Melissa was hauled away without a job. Growing debt from the extravagant lifestyle she had continued to lead, in spite of her diminished income and a ruined reputation, Melissa began contacting our common acquaintances, telling them about her horrible error and her need to make amends with me. According to my buddy Chris, she is attempting to repair her reputation. Throughout your sickness, Beers keeps telling everyone that she was experiencing a mental health crisis, that she wasn't herself, that she's received assistance, and that she wants to make apologies. I didn't care about Melissa's redemption tour since I was too preoccupied with Sarah to give it much thought. I had always wanted to see Yellowstone, so we were organizing a trip there. However, Melissa had vetoed since there weren't enough Instagram chances or upscale hotels. Sarah and I planned to trek during the day, sleep in a tent, and watch the stars at night. Melissa would have detested such a genuine encounter. Then the texts began. "I miss you" first to Ryan, then to my work email, and finally to unknown numbers when I banned the earlier ones. I committed the greatest error of my life. You were always the one with strength. Now I see that. Please, only coffee. Let me clarify. I've changed as a person. I've matured. I'm learning about my patterns in treatment. I laughed out at the final one. Melissa merely needed to see her basic selfishness as a pattern, her incapacity to view other people as anything else than props in her life's film. Although it hadn't yet escalated to that degree of harassment, Ryan advised that I obtain a restraining order. In addition, I knew Melissa well enough to know that she would ultimately grow tired of being rejected and find someone else to target. She had an unusually short attention span for anything that didn't satisfy her right away.